experiments, then we know people are willing to pay. What price? So we can run these experiments, okay? So let's have a look how this kind of looks like. Instead of investing in an idea and saying, is this good or bad? What do? We take this scorecard. So we have this innovation scorecard. And I'll show you how it works. And then at every phase, we score the idea and we score it for making progress. And this is exactly how Bosch did it. They killed ideas based on evidence that exists, or if evidence is not there, they kill the idea. Okay, let me make this concrete. So what's an experiment? Sounds kind of, but what is an experiment? It's like in science. You take a hypothesis, customers are willing to pay. What could you do? You could talk to them. Do you have a budget for this? Yes. Have you ever paid for similar products? Yes. Do you see how now we're creating evidence to support the spreadsheet? Before we build it. Because most companies, they start with feasibility. Wrong thing to do. So now the problem with interviews is the evidence is very light. What people say is not what they do. Another experiment, like card sort. Who of you has ever personally run a business experiment like this? Talk to customers to learn about an idea. Who's ever done that? Okay. Who of you has talked to a customer in the last 24 hours? In the last 7 days? Who hasn't talked to a customer the last month? Okay, nobody dares to put their hand up now, right? So let me show you what card sort is. There's this company, this was a startup called ShapeScale, and they had this idea for
Imagine
this scale.
You step on a scale that not only reads your weight, but also scans your entire body in just a few seconds. Once your scale has synced with your smartphone app, you know exactly how your body has been changing over time. You will be able to visualize where you've been gaining muscle and where you've been losing body fat.
Okay, I was obviously the model for that advertising, right? Don't laugh, that's unfair. Okay, so what they did is this is what you call card sort experiment. They said, we want to build an application for this scale, but we don't know which features are going to work best. So, and not from a technical point of view. So they came up with all of these features, and they made cards, okay? So here, you have different things like tracking muscle, track measurement. Here you have, this is what I call the Champions League thing, when you drink too much beer and watch too much football. Okay, see, that joke never flies. Nobody ever laughs anywhere in the world. And let me try another one. This, if you don't laugh, I'm going to be really sad. This is the Kardashian model, where you track volume. I think you laugh to just be friendly with me. But so the point is, they put these cards in front of the customers, and rather than just asking, what do you want? They said, could you force rank these? And it turns out that some features would outperform and some features would underperform. Now that's just one experiment. The best teams run 10 experiments like this. We actually now have about a yardstick with all the companies we work with, not startups, but large companies. It's one experiment per week. So the best teams get to 10 to 12 experiments, okay? Here's another one. Instead of building something, you could make a brochure or a spec sheet of a solution. So this is a company that American Family Insurance, they wanted to build a new insurance or create a new insurance for farmers. But they didn't know if farmers would be interested. So what did they do? They made a brochure. They went to a convention. They gave the brochure here to farmers at the convention, and then they talked to them. But that's not all they did. They said, what people say is not what people do. So they did what you call a call to action experiment, CTA. Can you see here? Is the value proposition. Here, they ask, if you're interested, after the convention, call us or write us an email. That's a call to action. So if people say they're interested, but they never call or never send an email, how interested are they? 0, right? Or there's something more important. So in this case, 15% responded. The cattle farmers responded more than the corn farmers. So they changed the value proposition and the marketing methods. So before building the product or working with compliance to make it for one type of farmer or the others. They experimented with a simple prototype. Now, you might know GE. They make jet engines. They do these kind of things for spec sheets for their clients before building even prototypes. So it could be even in industrial tech, okay? So the principle here is you start with very light experiments and cheap experiments when you don't know if it's going to work, and you invest more and more, the more you know it's going to work. Now, what if we want really strong evidence? Something really strong. In business to business, there's this thing called letters of intent. A letter of intent will have more value and show more commitment. So this was a startup called Thanks. They wanted to use mineral waste, turn it into insulation foams so you could spray the foams into buildings. So that's kind of how they oriented their business model. But here's how they got to really strong evidence before actually turning that into foam. Because they started with panels. They didn't know if they could turn it into foam, but they had a hunch they could. But they knew they should do it when 4 construction companies said, we're going to sign a letter of intent to buy from you if you make this. Do you see how that's strong evidence? The product didn't exist. So rather than spending money first on building stuff, this is how you get evidence, okay? And then there's the Wizard of Oz thing where you actually make people believe the solution exists when it doesn't. So let me give you one from the 1980s. So before ChatGPT, in 1984, IBM tested speech recognition to immediately write what you said onto the screen, okay? Now, here's how they tested if people would be interested. You had a person going into an office, you had a microphone, the person would speak into the microphone, and the text would magically appear on the screen. 1984, okay? But what the people who were doing that didn't know, there was a wire that went to the back office, and you had an admin who was typing the text. So what just happened? The technology doesn't exist, so we didn't prove we can build it, but we did experiment with the user to understand, are they interested? How would they interact with it? This is what you call Wizard of Oz, from the story Wizard of Oz, where it looks real to the test subject, but it's not yet scalable. Why would you do that? To learn if people desire the product. And when they desire it, then you can start to build. Do you see the difference? Okay. So now that we have all that, let's compete for Swiss chocolate, okay? So the principles here is you start with the cheapest experiments. You don't build anything at the beginning. You increase the confidence in the idea by running multiple experiments for the same hypothesis. First, you talk to people. Are you willing to pay? Do you have a budget? Okay. But then you run pricing experiments where you actually simulate a transaction. So you get stronger and stronger evidence. And then you always pick the experiments with the strongest evidence. So now, let's see who of you actually paid attention. Pull out your phones. And we're going to compete for Swiss chocolate with the last 3 questions. Okay? So, I want you to go to your phone. And let's see. We have halftime report. MSD, hands up. MSD. Okay, we're all hunting you now. We're all hunting you now with 3 questions. The next question is, and again, speed matters. The next question, are you all ready? Ready? Okay, we got 50 players, good start, let's go. And this first one's really easy. The first one's really easy. Which statement is true of the following statements? Which statement is true? Business plans are a prerequisite for success. Large initial investments make it easier to succeed. Good and bad ideas are hard to distinguish early on in the process. If anybody votes for business plan, you got to leave the room, okay? Okay, still some of you still believe in business plans. I can guarantee you they do not work for innovation, okay? Good tool for exploitation, bad tool for innovation. Okay, next question. This one is still straightforward. The last one's going to be a bit harder. What should most increase your confidence in an innovation project? Large-scale surveys, a strong spreadsheet with great numbers, experiments that get customers to do something, the opinion of the highest paid person in the room. If you vote for the last, then you're probably a VC. Okay, so that was a bad joke. Okay, look, you listen. Now, these were easy. The last one is a trick question. It's framed in a difficult way, okay? So the last one is framed in a difficult way. It's not that hard, but it's framed like brain gymnastics. Which statement is wrong? Incorrect. Which statement is wrong? Hypotheses make the risk of an idea explicit. Business plans really don't matter for innovation projects. A product that customers love will always lead to innovation success. This is a trick question, of course. Because what is wrong? Okay, 37 of you got it correct. So you can have a great product and still fail. Why? Because you're spending more money than you're earning. Which sounds again trivial, but a lot of startups, they go bankrupt because they don't earn money at all because they build something nobody wants. Or they don't have a scalable business model, okay? So I can give you $1. If it costs me $2, it's going to be a wildly successful product, but it's going to be a terrible business model, okay? So seems to make sense. Why am I emphasizing this? Because most companies focus on product and testing product. We start immediately from business model. And the difference can be a multi-million dollars. If you focus on business models, you will be more successful and build more sustainable business models. Okay, but what we really all want to know, you're waiting for the winner of this wonderful Swiss chocolate, which you cannot get in the mass market. It's Sprüngli. Okay. Looks like we have a new winner. Bala. Where's Bala? Okay, applause, applause, applause. Okay, wonderful. So, you have bragging rights at least for being the most knowledgeable, okay? The most knowledgeable person when it comes to innovation. So, now, okay, let me bring this all together. So, very quickly, this is how you score ideas. I want you to be able to score ideas. The example I'm going to give you is an old one. This is Tesla pre-Elon Musk, okay? Pre-Elon Musk. The founders, Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning, they had this vision of the Roadster. But when they started, and Mark gives a wonderful talk, when they started, they didn't know how to succeed, so they tested their ideas. So the first experiment they did is they put the existing electric vehicles in front of people and asked them, what do you think of these cars? This is how electric vehicles looked before Tesla, okay? So this is Mark talking about it.
Why weren't these cars selling? Now, and some of these people were in San Carlos, I think, or Menlo Park or San Carlos. We used to go over and look at them.
Okay, so anybody know why these cars weren't selling? But the first thing they learned is the current buyers of electric vehicles are not our market. So they learned that their market is people in the US who want to buy a German car. Not an electric vehicle, a German car that happens to be an electric vehicle. So then they actually did another experiment, what you call a mashup. They bought a Lotus Elise and they turned it in what they would call an electric vehicle with a battery pack and everything and put people inside, okay? So what did they learn? They learned a couple of things from this.
And by November, we were putting our battery pack, our drivetrain basically, into a Lotus Elise shell and our chassis. And this was to sort of test out, it was called a mule. You take parts from one car and parts from another. It isn't what's going to reproduce, but it was a...
Okay, so they got evidence from talking to people. But they said that's not enough. What if we actually did a so-called call to action experiment? So here you have what you call a landing page. Some of you might have heard of this experiment called a landing page. So this is the original Tesla landing page where here, if I just take a white pen here, you could sign up with your email. So they would get hundreds of people to go to the website and sign up if they were interested. Is that a strong experiment? Not so much. I mean, it doesn't cost you a lot for your email, but if you're not interested, you're not going to sign up. So they already had a little bit more evidence about how many people were interested. Then they said, okay, how could we get even stronger evidence? So they pre-sold 100 Tesla Roadsters before they were actually able to build them with a down payment of $100,000. So very quickly, 100 people bought the car. So you see how they went to stronger and stronger evidence? All of this before they had the final car. So they tested before, and this was the original page, they tested before building. And some of you might know, Elon Musk actually used this with the Model 3. They said, if you make a down payment of $5,000, we will reserve a Tesla Model 3 for you. Within a week, I think they got 200,000 down payments, or 300, somewhere between 200 and 300,000.
$1,000.
$5,000. So what happened then is Elon Musk took that evidence, he went to the banks, and he said, can you give me more money? But you see the power of evidence? Used in a slightly different way, but it's the power of evidence. If he just said, I had an idea, banks wouldn't have given him anything, okay? So now, what does that mean for us? Now you have a scoring system. You can score an idea. So we said, okay, we want to score ideas so management teams can score desirability, feasibility, and viability. So it's very simple. There's several levels of evidence. 0 is a spreadsheet made explicit. It has a fantasy. Business plan, 0 evidence, okay? Evidence is if we talk to people. Really strong evidence is if we get them to do something really with skin in the game. So now if we take this and we take the Tesla example, we can score. This was very light. Because, maybe there was a prototype, but this boomerang, not really. But when they sat people into a car, they could actually feel, what does an electric vehicle feel like? And then if you take the call to action experiment, they get people to sign up by email. How can we make it even stronger? We can get them to make a down payment. Why is it not a level 5? Real evidence from real markets, because it's the first segment that they're selling to, okay? But so the point here was to be able to score an idea just like we've seen with Bosch, right? So the example I showed you before, this is the type of stuff that Bosch did. Okay, now, do you still have some energy? Because I've been talking a bit, I'll take a bit more time. Do you still have some energy to look at the innovation playbook? Who's still interested in hearing me talk about the innovation playbook? Okay, good. Who's not interested? You just vote with your feet, okay? That's absolutely fine. So now, with Strategize, we said, how can we make our approach more accessible? So we used to just work with large companies like Honeywell, L'Oreal, and so on, or Bosch. So we had this full service stack. We would do the coaching with our coaches of our programs, our playbooks on our platform. And then we said, well, that's limited to a small part of the world. How can we scale this? So we said, we're going to take these programs, these playbooks, and we're going to make them accessible to anybody in the world, either so companies can do it themselves, or consultants can do it with anybody who they want. It's a little bit what you did, but on the internet, right? So then we said, okay, playbooks and innovation, that's kind of our world. Those are our tools. What if we made a platform so anybody can create playbooks on any topic? And what I mean with playbooks is very simple. It's a step-by-step approach. So if I just take one we've seen, if we take Bosch, so this is a process. Process is complicated. We need to learn it. Nobody has time to learn. So we said, okay, the way we're going to do it is we're going to take this process and we're going to make it accessible to everybody. So the process is simple. You start by learning the tools. We looked at the business model canvas. There's other tools like the value proposition canvas. Then we show a team how to map out an idea with these tools. And then once you have the idea, after a day, you get out of the building and you talk to customers and you run experiments, like we've seen. Easy, run experiments. And then we present the evidence, and then we kill an idea, or we go on. You follow the process? Okay. So that's what Bosch did. And they did this for IoT-enabled cold chains in agriculture. They went through this process so that they could either kill the idea or invest in the idea. And the idea took off. So this is exactly how they've done it with these kinds of playbooks. So now let me make this concrete. And this is going to be a bit fast, and you don't need to understand the details. But these are the steps of the process where you first learn about the concepts, okay, a little bit. The second step is you shape your idea. If I can make this work, here. You shape your idea, then you test your idea, and you synthesize the evidence, and then you make the decision. And by the way, you're going to get all the slides. But this is a lot of stuff, and we don't have time to learn. So what if we took that and we gave away this secret sauce in a playbook, like a workbook? Wouldn't that be cool? So everything we learn from Bosch, from L'Oreal, from Honeywell, we package that and we put it into something simple. So what we said is we're going to create a platform where you have the steps, where you go through step 1, step 2, step 3. So we handhold people through the steps. And some steps require learning, okay? So like here, you're getting the advantage of me kind of teaching you directly, or a way to do it is with videos. That's the e-learning part. But you get the ideas, you get the concepts. But nobody has time to learn. What we really want to do is create an outcome, a result. So what if we take the first outcome we need to create? When we innovate, we need to map out a business model. So you first watch a video, and then you start to create that business model in a digital tool, a digital visual workspace. Okay, what was the next step after we sketched out our ideas? Anybody remember? What do we do as soon as we have this business design done? Feasibility. No! Feasibility is not what we need to do. Are you an engineer? What do we do before feasibility? Desirability, okay? So, what's the simplest tool we've created? Is a tool called the customer profile, which you can quickly create. But here's the thing. Then you get people to get out of the building to interview. So we said, what if we created a tool where it automatically creates the interview for you? So you go through this tool, you interview customers, and it immediately synthesizes that for you. So step by step, and it helps you do things. So innovation doesn't need to be complicated. It's super straightforward to do this, okay? Now, let me give you a different approach of how you can use AI to think about value propositions. Who of you in your business ever had to think about how your products and services create value for your customers, to articulate not the features, but the value proposition? Who of you has ever worked on formulating the value proposition? Who of you has ever used AI to help you formulate the value proposition? Okay, it's very powerful. So let me give you kind of just the big picture playbook. So we created this playbook because we've seen a lot of engineers, in particular in large companies like Honeywell, they have a hard time articulating their value proposition. So we said, what do you really need? You need a product description. You need an understanding of the customer. We call this the customer profile and the solution. And then you need an LLM, you need AI of your choice. I like using ChatGPT. And you take that and put it into a great value proposition. So, first step, understanding customer, jobs, pains, and gains. Okay? What do they care about? Second step, what are the features that your customers care about most? Once you have that, you take these three, product description, deep understanding of your customer, deep understanding of the features they care about, and then you throw it into an LLM, and out comes, magically, a great description of how you're creating value. You do not need to think anymore. You can do this in a very short time frame. So, I did this for Strategizer, for the playbooks. So we take a product description, we rank the customer jobs, pains, and gains, we rank the features, not based on our understanding, but based on customer understanding, and we throw this into an LLM. So Technically, it looks like this, a bit of text. We turn this into text, don't even need to turn it into text. Then we take that, and magically, with a prompt, it helps you create that value proposition description based on what you did. But the point here is, I didn't immediately go to, hey, ChatGPT, create a value proposition for me, because I need to do some groundwork. I do need to understand the customer. I do need to understand which features they value. So that's back to business basics. With LLMs, we cut corners, but we actually won't get there faster in many cases. So the business basics still apply. So when I do this with this kind of prompt, it spits out 3 different results, okay? Results without the theory was the first prototype, then it comes up with a second prototype, and a third alternative. So it gives me, in a matter of milliseconds, 3 alternatives, and I can start working from there. It's much faster. Faster than your marketing team could do this. So marketing as a profession completely changes. Do you see what I'm talking about here? So it's not a text, writer anymore. It's proving things. So then I did a second one. I said, okay, now I want you to focus just on my customers' main jobs, main pains, main gains. Create me different alternatives. So again, within milliseconds, it creates a prototype for me, or 3 prototypes. Main customer job, main pain reliever, main gain creator. So immediately, without a marketing department, I get stuff there, and then if I have a marketing department, I can iterate. But so the ways we work will change. The business fundamentals, customers, value proposition, and iteration will not change. Now, once I have this, so I just spit out 3 different alternatives. What's the next step I would need to do? I came up with 3 possible descriptions of a value proposition. How do I know which one's the best? I could talk to customers. Even better is a so-called A/B test. I test 3 different solutions, each one with 1,000 people, and I look which one performs best. So talking to customers is one. More effective is what you call A/B tests. But so what I showed you that applies to innovation also applies to execution. Okay, so these are the kind of playbooks. I have another playbook, but I think in the interest of time, I'm going to actually stop here and we can go to questions. For the last playbook, I'll do some marketing for a free product. We have a webinar on the playbook to run strategy sessions. Who of you has ever been in a bad strategy session? Okay. Now, because you run them on your own, you got to be careful what you're saying, right? So, I've been in a lot of bad strategy sessions because the leaders we work with, they're not experts of strategy sessions, they're expert of their content. So what we said is, why don't we write a playbook on strategy sessions? So what we're going to show you in the webinar is the strategy sessions we run for large companies of which you all know the names. Because it's pretty accessible and it's just about playbooks and processes. Anyways, I'm going to stop there. I do hope you learned a little bit of something. So we did have a great audience, right? So, but thank you for paying attention. Okay, yeah.
We have a mic here.
The mic is still fine, yeah. And I apologize for the lacking Swiss humor.
Yeah, that's the question.
Okay.
First of all, thanks, Alex. I think I'm a lot more optimistic than I thought I would be at the end of this session. I think we picked up some nuggets which are pointers at least.
Okay.
Start a process up.
Yeah.
First question is strategy, growth, and competition in the age of AI. Dr. Alex, in the AI era, what are the biggest strategy blind spots you see among established companies?
Okay, so I'll give you the very, very biggest strategy blind spot is this. If we can put on the slides, can you put the slides back on? So the biggest blind spot is, we can get this back up, is this, that companies are 99% focused on running the business, and they're really bad, from the selection that I see, they're really bad at experimenting with new ideas. So remember I talked to you about the dual mindset, explore, exploit? Many companies, they actually have managerial leaders, not entrepreneurial leaders. Entrepreneurial leaders are good at running the business and exploring at the same time. And I think that's the biggest blind spot, is that we have great managers in the companies I work with, but again, like that's a broad statement of my view on the companies I work with. And we do not have enough entrepreneurial leaders. That might be very different in this room, okay? So I can't speak for the people here, but the companies I work with, and this is not a value judgment, they just grew up running a company. And I have CEOs who tell me, Alex, I don't know how to do exploration. So they're very honest about these things.
I think we've answered this question. Answer. Next one. Could you share examples of companies that have successfully used strategies or playbooks on to reinvent themselves through AI?
But through AI, I would say it's very early, because exploration of bolder ideas, not just in innovation in the core engine of improving the business, does take 3 years or so. So today, and you'd be surprised actually, today most companies that come to us, they do not come to us with the mandate to implement AI innovations. They don't. They just say, help us explore, and some of the teams will work on AI, most of them don't. So when everybody tells me all the innovation budgets are going to AI, I can't confirm that. Now, I can't talk for other companies than the ones we work with. All they say is, and I won't give you the name, but one of the large companies we work with, they say, oh, Alex, we understand we applied the exploitation playbook to exploration. Just help us explore more. And they don't narrow it down to AI. But the point is if they know how to explore, AI will be a side benefit which they will be able to explore. So again, it's the management basics to a certain extent that will help you apply.
Something you'll be reiterating all the time.
Yes.
This question, you could see the question.
Yeah. You have not, okay, we see it on it. You have not assessed the role of culture in this. Yeah. Well, yeah. Excellent. If you want me to talk about culture, you're going to have to bring me here for a day, okay? So there are a couple of core themes. Culture is one that we obviously need to look at. And it's very simple. I'll give you a story. I worked with one company, digital company, about 7,000 people. The CEO said, oh, Alex, I get it. I need to infect everybody with the innovation virus. He was thinking, oh, that's culture. I said, oh, what did I do wrong? I told him, no. Here's what you need to do. You need to create a space, not a building, but a space with processes and clear rules how innovators need to explore. So they know, here's how I get money, here's how I know what to do, and here's how leadership is going to decide. If you have that explicit, you will change the culture. But the culture changes from the top. So it's very simple. If leadership does evidence-based investments, and you have the processes, culture will change on its own. Now, what's the number one thing to change culture? There's only one thing you need to change, and then apply the strategizer playbooks. What's the number one thing? What needs to change? It will change the culture almost immediately if you have the right CEO supported by the right board. And the board hires the CEO, okay, mostly. Not in the case of Tesla, I'd say the other way around. But so, if the CEO is entrepreneurial, they will instill the right innovation culture with the right processes. But it starts with the CEO. Innovation is top-down and bottom-up at the same time.
This one. How can senior leadership teams use strategies, frameworks to turn AI-driven insights into actionable business strategies? Rocky.
So again, it's not rocket science. It's back to the basics.
Science, yeah.
It's rocket science. It's number one, dual mindset, explore, exploit, number one. Number two, evidence-based processes and leaders who invest in evidence. And then you give what we call innovation guidance. You say, we want to create new value propositions and business models based on AI. So you narrow it down to the strategic guidance. You have those in place, things will almost happen automatically. It's not that hard, but you have to have a buy-in from everybody.
Next one. Go. Yeah, this is the one. Semantics rather than fundamental business value, of course.
Okay, let me be very clear. Technology, AI, robotics, whatever you want, does not create value per se. Which sounds trivial, okay? But I work with technology teams that think technology first. What you want to instill is technology teams that immediately talk to customers. So AI, it's all the same stuff. Technology does not create value.
Enablers at best.
Yeah. So let me give you an example, a story. So about 10 years ago, I had to go to Portugal and I worked with an accelerator. I went to every entrepreneur and I asked them, how are you creating value for customers? I asked every entrepreneur, how are you creating value for customers?
On the accelerator.
What do you think? What do you think their answer was? My product does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I went to the next one and said, no, how do you create value? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So everybody talks about features. AI or not, doesn't matter. So then I said, no, you did not listen to my question. How are you creating value? And then they looked at me and they didn't understand. So I said, take your feature and tell me why your customers will care about your feature. Now that seems, again, so trivial. But talk to your teams and ask them, how are we creating value for the customer? Yes, and they will. Honestly, business is not that complicated, but we make it complicated. So we need to get back to the basics, is my take on it.
I think it's a motherhood question. Yeah. How can AI be used to create sustainable development?
That's above my pay grade. I'm not going to answer that one. So again, if we look at the question is almost formulated in the wrong way. So it's the same processes to create sustainable businesses like any other technology. So again, it's asking, how do we create value for customers or stakeholders or beneficiaries with which business model? The only difference is, here you add a constraint and you say, we have an impact constraint, which is we want to create environmental impact. That's a constraint. That's the only thing you add, and the rest is creativity of how we do that.
To be fair to the question, two buzzwords are happening today.
Yes.
AI and sustainable development.
Yes.
The question is about two buzzwords happening. Yeah. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think I had it gray up.
Yeah. Good. And thanks for your patience. Yeah. Excellent. Good.
Thank you, Dr. Alex. And over 840 viewers are watching the program live. We got a lot of questions. We tried and accommodate as many as possible. Thanks to all the members of TAI, MMA and CIC for joining us. Thank you.